At the outset of the panic regarding a novel coronavirus, there was a great concern about xenophobia. But if you are currently wearing a mask for fear of testing positive for infection, being hospitalized as a result, or even succumbing to a disease that is proven to find the most vulnerable fatalities amongst those with a pre-existing medical condition that complicates infection, those that are elderly, or a combination of both, one of the most basic concepts that must be understood in epidemiology is that a virus does not spontaneously develop in nature and must originate somewhere, as in the case of the infection from measles, which has been practically eliminated in the United States in this century, but which viral infection continues to be monitored by the Centers for Disease Control, because despite having well over 90% of Americans vaccinated against that infection, it may still yet create an endemic incident when introduced to the United States by a foreign traveler. And foreign travel generally happens only by air, coming into points on the East Coast, on the West Coast, generally New York, on the East Coast, generally Los Angeles on the West Coast. And also there's also that possibility of coming in by ship because of cargo being transported. But also it's important to understand that because despite being the most abundant biological particle in the world, viruses do not simply mutate and generate, especially in strains that are harmful to man. And before the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, there were only 219 viruses that were known to be harmful to man. And before the outbreaks of MERS in Saudi Arabia in 2012 and SARS in Hong Kong in 2003, there were only 4 coronaviruses known to be harmful to man. So the first epidemiology lesson point to remember is that viruses, very, very small, do not just materialize, and they have to come from somewhere. So, using a success story in epidemiology, it might be good to examine measles, a contagion with which most are comfortably familiar, which is, like COVID-19, caused by a viral infection, albeit not a coronavirus infection, which also, like COVID-19, can be most harmful to a small segment of the population, but in that case, children on the other end of the spectrum from COVID-19, which is most fatal to the elderly, and which, believe it or not, don't let the spots fool you, is actually classified as an upper respiratory viral infection, which is transmitted from person to person by practically the same methods as the current novel virus COVID-19 pandemic pathogen, by contact with a contaminated surface in indirect infection, warranting good practices in washing your hands, or in direct infection, coughing and sneezing on a person not adhering to social distancing guidelines within 6 feet or less of the mouth and nose of the infected person, but which is actually the most infectious virus harmful to man, because despite only being able to remain a viable biological agent for just 2 short hours without a sustaining host, the measles virus can also be transmitted from person to person by saliva, and has the ability to persist in the air for that entire 2-hour lifespan, presenting a brief window of opportunity for an airborne infection to occur. And so to review, what have we learned today by examining the most infectious virus known to man, measles, which we actually virtually eliminated in the United States, to help us feel more secure in the current pandemic crisis? First, remember that viruses like COVID-19 are really small biological particles that you cannot see with the human eye, because they are even tinier than cells, Second, they have to come from somewhere and do not just materialize like magic from nowhere at all. Third, like most things in science, even a novel coronavirus operates under immutable laws and constraints of science that dictate how a person may become infected. And in the case of COVID-19, only by a person displaying symptoms of coughing or sneezing, to present the opportunity for a droplet to enter your upper respiratory tract for an infection to occur, or by your hands coming into contact with a contaminated surface, which researchers at CDC have found aboard the Princess Diamond cruise ship to persist in viability for at least 11 days. So unless you are in an environment where persons are constantly sneezing and coughing on you, even when you are alone driving in your car, one of the best ways to avoid infection that might give you a 14% chance of being hospitalized after infection, about the probability of sustaining a treatable injury after jumping from an airplane with a parachute, is to simply do what your mama has been telling you to do since you were a child, and be sure to maintain good hygiene by thoroughly washing your hands. Because even without noticing, we happen to touch our faces at least 3,000 times per day. In the Army, we tell soldiers to stay alert to stay alive. My name is Major Mike Webb, and I am running for U.S. Congress. With liberty, honor, and excellence, by God, we shall make America great again. Honest. This advertisement